We're ready. Okay, welcome everyone. This is the March 26th.
Harriet and Bill. Harriet and Bill.
This is a continuation of the March 26th Wenham Board of Selectmen meeting. We have just come out of executive session and are now entering our open session portion of the meeting. As always, the first thing that we do at our meetings is to invite public input on items that are not on the agenda. It's usually a pretty short item because we don't typically have too much, but we welcome it. But we'll go right past that.
It's your one opportunity to step right up to the plate.
It's on my citizens engagement list.
That's right.
The next thing that we have are announcements, as we do every meeting. And John, you have announcements.
Busy time of year. Do we have announcements?
We have
all
announcements.
Right. Let's see if we can get through all of these for you. All right. Jan Dempsey, who's been our library director for 14 years, is going to retire, for those who have not heard. Jan has been a true spirit of good stuff at that library. I mean, she has brought in so many, both new members and services, and how that place runs is so different. And I know she's worked a lot with you, Peter, on the physical plant issues and cutting those straightened out. So on Thursday, March 28th, from 4 to 7 p.m. At the Wenham Public Library, there'll be a little bit of a ceremony, a chance to say thank you to Jan, and we'd love to have you come and show up and wish her the best. She can't wait, I guess, to spend more time with her grandchildren and that sort of thing, because she spends a lot of time with everybody else's children in town.
Right.
All right. We have a warrant hearing coming up because of town meeting. So the warrant hearing, it's an annual event for the town meeting, and it'll take place at the Bucher Elementary Multi-Purpose Room on Monday, April 1st, which I think is next Monday, right? Yes, right, next Monday, at 7 p.m. Please be there. It will help you a lot to understand what the budget is all about, ask questions, and hopefully get good answers and good responses. Following up on that, our annual town meeting will be held the following Saturday, April 6th, at 1 o'clock in the Perkins Auditorium. That's going to be the annual town meeting. There'll be an annual town meeting check-in with the Board of Registrars and the Wenham Village Improvement Society. Town luncheon will begin at 12 o'clock. So 12 you eat, 1 you do your work, and hopefully by
3 o'clock you go home.
Something like that, right?
It sounds like 12 o'clock is the check-in.
Maybe.
Is going to be in at 12 as well.
It is.
Okay.
All right. There apparently is a kids' town meeting. Do you need childcare during the town meeting? Please, if you need that help, there will be a lot of the students who are part of the Regional High School's National Honor Society who have offered to take care of children during that time. I know this is not the first year. It's been quite a few years, and they do a great job. They really do. So don't hesitate.
Let's hope for good weather.
And then, yes, we don't need another snowstorm,
Maybe
right,
bad
Jack?
weather. A bright sunny day is not necessarily good for a town meeting.
All right, we also...
It's a good day,
A little bit of rain.
A little bit of rain.
Yeah, so people don't want to go out and be outside if they're okay with staying at a town meeting. That's going to be my wish.
There's also going to be candidates night. So for the different offices in both Hamilton and Wenham that are up for grabs, that will be... Come to the candidates night. It's presented by the League of Women Voters of Hamilton and Wenham, and it's going to be on Wednesday, April 3rd, next week, from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Bucher Elementary Multi-Purpose Room. The town elections for those positions and those folks running will be held at Town Hall here on Thursday, April 11th, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Visit the website if there's more information you need, and make a call to Town Hall if there is something else. That's what I have, Catherine.
Okay, thank you. do we have a town administrator
No,
report?
just a couple quick things following
yes.
up on that.
I'm glad you're saying that, Peter.
You will see
Love that color.
soon, can't miss it.
Nope.
Something in the mail in the next couple days that's going to every resident to remind folks about a lot of the dates that John mentioned. So warrant hearing, annual town meeting, and the election. This was part of the follow-up that we had after last year's town meeting, where we did a flyer in between the first and second iteration town meeting to make sure that we got people out. So we tried to get ahead of it this year and get some turnout and awareness. And on that front, the 2018 annual town report and the warrant book for town meeting, those will all also be being delivered this weekend by the Boy Scouts.
And I think this card is great. I mean,
I do
it's got
too.
the key
Excellent idea.
dates. Yep.
Excellent idea. I've had frequent questions from people I've run across, and when is the elections?
Yep. And you can keep this on your counter, pin it to the wall.
And it
Tape it to the
includes
window.
the backup date on it? I
It
didn't
does.
read-
Yep.
I was so blinded by the color that I didn't read the whole thing. Upstairs on Nikki's desk.
Yeah, it does. We do include a reference to the backup date, so people have that on their calendar too, hopefully.
We don't need it.
No need for it, but we
Be-
did put that out there. Yep.
And when did you say that was
Oh,
going
yes.
out?
It's going out probably in tomorrow's mail, Thursday at the latest.
And relative to that, am I correct to say that the warrant is actually on the website now?
Correct.
I think I saw
Yes.
the warrant.
Yep, yep.
So
The warrant's
the
been
books are
posted.
not going to be delivered till next weekend, but the warrant is available for people to look at on the website.
Yes, and speaking of the website, we did a launch of our newly redesigned website late last week. And so I think a major upgrade, the website had last been upgraded 5+ years ago. We kept with our same vendor. There was very minimal cost, just for a little new functionality, but essentially no cost upgrade, just a lot of work on Nikki's part, so I did want to recognize her for doing a great job. A lot easier to navigate, and I think a big improvement aesthetically over what we have. You know, websites are constantly evolving.
Yes, looks more like
and-
today's
and-
website.
And, yeah, and trying to, draw more traffic and help residents navigate and find what they need. So we tried to set it up so there's a lot more functionality in terms of being able to find things through many different ways as opposed to just one way down the rabbit hole. So a great project, and the mailing also points folks to the website, and we've got, a lot of information available there.
Excellent.
And special thanks to Nikki. As in any website, there was a link that someone on a committee that I work on wasn't live, and they needed a report. And I emailed Nikki and said, can you help with this? And 20 minutes later, the link was fixed. So she's doing a great job of, there's so many things. They're never
Pulling all that
pulling
information
all
across.
that information.
Yep.
But it just happened to be something someone needed that time, and she was great in her response. So
Yep.
thanks for that. Okay, anything else on reports? Otherwise, we're going to move to new business. We will be taking this agenda a little bit out of order, but we're going to begin at the beginning.
Good
with
thing
A,
to do. Gee.
just for fun. A, under new business, is a review of the common victualist license for the bagel shop. And it's John's item, so I'll let you
Thank you.
take it away. I'm just so excited about it.
Yeah, you
that
are so
I
excited.
almost can't.
You just can't wait to eat.
A New Yorker,
Well, this is only for discussion,
Yes,
Catherine.
yes.
We're not opening the bagel shop today,
No, no.
though we might want to.
I can wait.
I was hoping to get some free bagels tonight.
All right. Well,
Okay.
we have with us, and I'm reticent to have their names right at hand. I just met them a few minutes ago.
Tom Smith and Hunter Tucci.
Hunter, yes, okay.
The Tucci,
Would you
was
two
it?
gentlemen mind coming up and a little bit of presentation to the board and to the community, because we're very serious in welcoming you to the town, and this is, as I said, this is a discussion on your opportunity. You've filled out a lot of paperwork, and I guess you have some other requirements to finish meeting, so maybe you could explain what that is to us briefly, and then Any opening marketing statements you want to make? We get around a little bit or something.
Absolutely.
So welcome.
First off, thank you for the opportunity tonight. We very much look forward to embedding ourselves in the town of Wenham. So it's my partner Hunter Tuccio, and our third partner, Brooks Townsend, and we opened the bagel shop in Beverly Farms 3.5 years ago. And we're at the Beverly Farms train station, and it's a sign of kind of how business is going that we're able to expand, and the community's been unbelievable over there. We've gotten a really big draw from Endicott College as well, but about 1.5 years ago, we really saw this turnover with repeat customers from Hamilton Wenham High and Hamilton Wenham as well. So when the opportunity came up down the street at 158 Main Street, to us it was kind of a no-brainer. We both live locally. I went to Pingree. I graduated in 2008, so I know the community well. I respect the community, and I like the community a lot. And as Hunter and I have worked together, he's gotten to know the community well. And everyone who we've met with so far, from the folks at the Board of Health to Jackie in the office upstairs, have been unbelievable. So we just completed our health packet. That got its stamp of approval yesterday. And so our plumber and the electrician will be going in for their permits, hoping to start with one on Friday, the other one next week. I know we're gonna be talking to the police and fire department
I was
as
going
well.
to say, you have part of your audience right here.
Just got a heads up if they didn't know.
We'll be doing that, if not tomorrow, Thursday. Just setting up the time to meet with you folks. Want to introduce ourselves, but know, kind of the process and expectations and whatnot. I think our experience and with the way things have gone in Beverly Farms and, with law enforcement and the fire department, we do a bunch of different collaborations with them. It's gone really well, and we look forward to establishing our relationships with you folks, very much so. For us, it's a key component to this is embedding ourselves in the community. So Hunter, myself, and Brooks, we all come from sports backgrounds. So the vice president of the Little League approached us about doing a sponsorship and whatnot. So we're going to be engaging in that at the end of April. I'm a former hockey player, so we hope to do something with the Hamilton Wenham hockey program. And so with that, obviously we want to do well. We believe in our product. To give you a little background on that, we're selling an authentic New York style bagel. And so that, I think, is a main reason why the community in Beverly has responded so well, is all our bagels get baked on site every day. We have over 10 types of cream cheese, 25 flavors of coffee. We do your lox, which we get from Nova Scotia, your authentic New York boar's head meat, and really try to create an experience like you were in New York City, in Manhattan, going to a New York deli, just bringing that to the North Shore. And so when we did our training and our distributors and whatnot, it was all out of New York. So it's an authentic product. And we're looking forward to, we actually had 2 interviews today with a gentleman and a woman who live, one's in Hamilton, one's in Wenham. So we look forward to hiring locally. And, again, just really looking forward to this opportunity. Some people, like big city versus small town. Some people like small town versus big city. We've really gotten the pleasure and gotten enjoyment out of people coming in, knowing our names, us knowing their names, a little bit of their backstory in the farms, and we hope to translate that right over into Wenham, where you're coming in obviously to receive a product, but the experience is more than that. And that's something that we really hope to create, and something that we pride ourselves on in our other store. And really, customer service is our focal point. So we really hope to distribute that and exemplify that and the experience of each and every one that comes in.
How long have you been in the farms?
So we opened in November of 2015, so about 3.5 years. And it's small business is interesting. So we've gotten 3.5 years to kind of work out the kinks, figure out what works and what doesn't. Like I said, the coming to this market, the folks who do come in from Hamilton and Wenham have been unbelievable. And I will say the students at Hamilton Wenham High have been awesome with really helping us not only spread the word, but keep coming back. It's not a terribly far drive, but you know, it's not right down the street, and we were pretty good following.
Well, you've got Gordon College down the road, too. They're a little
Yep.
bit further, but
Yep, Gordon, we've tapped into that market as well, and I think with this store, obviously there in Wenham, they do come to us, but I believe our store is closer, but when we went on campus last month, they're excited that it's in the same town.
Yeah.
So I think
It feels closer because it's in the same town.
I'm curious to see how kind of that translates, but to your point, yes, we do have obviously Gordon and Wenham as well.
Great, great.
Welcome.
Just a couple of questions. It looks like your hours of operation during the week, 6:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. and 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. on the weekends. So this is primarily a breakfast, lunch kind of situation, or
Correct.
early morning through lunch kind of
Yeah,
operation.
I mean, we've gotten approached to do alcohol licensing and whatnot in Beverly Farms, and we've shied away from it. We think
Prudent.
we are pretty good at what we do, and we're not trying to extend at this time with that.
You don't want to be beer and bagels?
No, if you ask the college kids, I think they
Yeah.
would like it, but no, it's not
I'm
really.
not sure to be an authentic New York store to me if you sold
Yeah.
beer too, just saying.
It's not really what we're going for right now. So yes, the hours of operation
Okay.
do not extend and haven't for 3.5 years
Right.
past 3 p.m.
And parking would be the only other thing that I would just throw out there. We actually met in the hall the other day, and I mentioned this, that there is parking in front, but some little-known parking behind the store. So whatever can be done to promote the fact that there is parking back there, I think might help you and everyone, because I feel like
absolutely.
it could be very popular, and cars coming and going, so I
Yeah,
don't...
we had a great meeting last week with the Historical Society.
Mhm.
So they approved our sign, but they gave us a month-long window to leave up our side banner, which is directing people that the building
Great.
comes with about 10 spots in
Yeah.
the rear. So I thought that was very nice of them. And,
Great.
and
A month, imagine that. They really,
You got a month out of them, you're doing good. If you got a month, you're doing very well,
they must have had more than
But that will
bagels
help.
before they went to the meeting.
because people will see it and then realize that it's there in a month.
No, it was very nice of them, and to your point, I think it's gonna help because we've gone to some of the other establishments on that street, and it's crazy. And I know a couple of years ago, there used to be parking across the street. I think it's good that, you know, there isn't. It's a busy street.
Yeah.
And now it's on one side, so there's only so many spots, so we hope to, you know, people will utilize the back for obviously a congestion issue, but for a safety issue as well.
Right, right. And assuming, and it looks like you're well on your way to get all the permitting that you need, but assuming you do and things go as you plan, when are you expecting to open? Or hoping to open?
We're hoping to open in April, and right now it's the week of, I believe it's the 7th or the 8th. So doing some type of soft opening, and then a few days later, a grand opening. And so we're really gonna see, you know, what happens with the electrical and the plumbing, and that's gonna kind of dictate, because we've already been hiring for it. We've done, you know, kind of different pieces, and a lot of the equipment's there. So it's just gonna be, you know, kind of the meetings that we have set up, obviously the meetings with, you know, fire and the police, and then seeing what, when they start getting into the walls, there's not a lot of work that needs to get done, but there are some key factors that need to be addressed.
Other questions? Or Tom
Welcome and
Hunter?
good luck.
Yeah, really.
Good luck, thank you for coming in. Well,
Thank
We're
you.
thrilled and pleased, and
Can a resident of Wenham ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Just wonder what the anticipated seating capacity is of the big.
That's a
So
good
we-
question.
That's a really good question. None.
Easy?
There's a good reason. I asked the same question, that's all.
High top tables, you told us.
Yes, yeah, high top tables so people can rest, obviously their beverages and their food. But, you know, if you come to our store in the farms, it's different. There's a fireplace, there's a bar, there's, you know, seating. But this model, with it being a main street, and also the facility is maybe a fifth of the size of our other store, it's getting people in and out as quick as possible and on their way. So, there are gonna be the high tops, but, Unfortunately, there's really no room for the seating. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Good luck.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you very much for coming, too.
Yeah,
you for the opportunity.
appreciate
Sure,
it.
we'll see you
appreciate it.
again shortly.
Yeah,
You're
All
welcome.
right, take care.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you.
thank you. All right.
No, it's not you or John, so.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not me.
Thank you, guys.
So at this point,
Isn't this Jack's agenda item?
yeah.
Did he have somebody
Nice
call
seeing
him?
you,
I was
Jack.
gonna just jump onto in the agenda. But I think I will, and I'll just introduce it, and by then, hopefully, Jack will be back. I was just about to say, and Jack's got the agenda item. So the next thing, we're gonna move up a little bit, because we have a guest here, and we don't want to keep him standing here. And it's an update on the status of the First Church Community Preservation Act grant agreement, and Jack has this item.
Yes, I don't know how we're going to move forward. So does he have the same thing we have in our package right here?
He does not have a copy of that, no.
He does not have a copy.
No.
So we have a grant agreement, and I understand that your colleagues, perhaps you have some proposed or suggested revisions to it.
What we do,
Yes, and so maybe, I'm trying to struggle how to go through this.
Before Bill jumps in, I'll just give a little bit of background, timing-wise.
Yeah, sure.
So the board at your December 18th meeting reviewed the original grant agreement that had been put together by town council based on the model grant agreement that we have now for all CPA projects, or projects that receive CPA funding. I then took the template that town council had produced and modified it to fit the particulars of our situation. And then we had it on the selectmen's agenda for the 18th. After the board had looked at it and said that they were okay with it, we sent it to Bill. I think there were a couple snafus with attachments not getting through and so forth, but so it's maybe end of December, very beginning of January, you finally got a copy of it.
Exactly.
And then we heard back in late January, mid to late January, from Bill, but with some input from some other folks. Yeah, who'd looked at it.
So do you suggest that I go through suggested revisions, or?
So I think the bottom line was, and Bill and I obviously talked a couple weeks ago now, is that their council normally, how these processes have worked is our council produces something, we send it to their council, council redlines it back and says, this is what we want to see, and then there's some back and forth. They didn't give us a red line copy back. They said broadly that we have some concerns or questions about it, but didn't necessarily,
Articulate those.
Particularly.
right?
That's correct.
And so I've, based on that feedback, taken a stab at what I think maybe, addressing those concerns or questions. But again, it's kind of hard to tell. It's my best guess.
Yeah, so let me,
Can we hear what the objections are first from?
that's what I asked a minute ago.
Yeah, I thought you were going to start going through our
I'm trying to just move this
responses.
forward.
Yeah,
one
I
way or
just
the
would,
other.
I think,
There seems to be reluctance to chair, that
No,
go
I-
back and forth.
To give a little background
Just-
to everybody.
yeah,
extent they're interested. This document that was provided to us back in November, December, which is really to provide payment to First Church in Wenham for the refurbishing of the Wenham town clock. The town owns the clock, and the clock is located in the steeple of First Church, and has been for many, many decades. In any event, the work that was entailed was basically resurfacing, repainting the clock faces, and then gold leafing the hands and numerals on the clock. With the town's consent, the church undertook the project on behalf of the town. The project was completed in about 2.5 years ago. The total project cost was about $14,300. So that's the background. There are several issues with the current draft that we had trouble with, and we tried to articulate in an email. We didn't mark up the draft, Peter, and that's probably our fault, but we chose not to mark up the agreement, but we tried to articulate what our challenges were with even beginning a markup of the agreement, because we felt it was so
unclear as to why the terms were being put forth and were inconsistent with the facts of the project. So basically, you know, I don't want to go into all the detail about it, but I can articulate them if you'd like, Catherine.
That would be great.
Okay,
It'd
great.
be good to make the rest of it make more sense.
So it was our agreement that the town.
All three of the selectmen have already seen
Yes.
their thing. So this is for the public, because you already know exactly what their concerns are,
I
right?
do, but it's a public meeting and there are public.
I'm just
people-
asking the question, you
Yes, I
know.
do. I do. We've received the email.
Very good. Well, let me just read. I'm going to read a little bit verbatim. I apologize.
Oh, that's fine.
It sounds like you've already read it, but the rest of the folks here have not.
We'll hear just the
So
results.
I asked the church council to articulate what our challenges were with the draft that was put forth. So it was our understanding that the town has agreed to reimburse the church for the clock's refurbishment of $14,100 for the project, and the document was to provided was for that purpose. The document was also intended to memorialize the undocumented arrangements for the use of the church steeple for the clock location, and to set forth the town's obligations to maintain and insure the clock. As the draft document was put forth, the conditions for payment seem unrelated to these facts. To my understanding, the clock refurbishment was not performed under federal standards, and in fact, these standards do not apply to this project since the church is not a federally registered historic building. And in fact, the regulations of the Wenham Historic Commission make clear that no review of the clock project was required by them. Upon looking further, I note that the church was asked to join the town in acknowledging the clock is an important historic asset. Our church council said that I think that is the town's to determine. The remaining conditions need to be discussed. The church is agreeable to confirming the continuing display of the clock and the steeple and protect the clock from damage by the cell tower equipment in the belfry. The town needs to acknowledge its obligation to maintain the clock in good repair and function and to insure it. The rest of the document seems a bit out of place given the completion of the refurbishment over 2.5 years ago. If the town wants to review invoices, they need to do it now and make copies as they wish for their retention. The indemnification is also unnecessary since the work was completed, and the town can and should inspect the work now to be sure that they are satisfied with it. That's basically
Okay.
the overview of concerns and.
Okay.
So we have some
Thank you.
suggested revisions along the lines of your concerns. So do you have a copy of the grant in front of you?
I do, yes.
Okay, good. So beginning on, I suppose, page 2, top, it says, whereas as the town clock is an important historical asset,
Yes,
we propose to eliminate that paragraph.
okay.
That's actually moving that paragraph from the condition section to the whereas, and
Okay.
basically saying that the town, yep,
Okay. Sounds good.
Under funding, I don't know if the town can follow this. I guess it's the third line down where it says, after the parenthetical expression, on the condition that the grantee, instead of shall has use of, we scratch shall and scratch has and change use to the past tense used, USED.
Great, perfect. Nice.
Okay? On the conditions, Part A and Part B, eliminate both.
Thank you.
part B basically goes up to the top of the whereas and says the town.
On Section 6, default termination, eliminate the whole paragraph.
Thank you.
Section 7, Jack Willen will always have right to go in the belfry. No, I'm talking-
You can call up there, Jack. God
Yeah,
bless you.
really.
that's in the belfry, not
We
me.
know how to do that, right, Stephen?
Someone who does
Yes,
it for a regular
Steve might know something about that.
So paragraph 7, return of funds, eliminate the whole paragraph. And those are our suggested revisions. So I'm not sure whether you had a list come in, whether you had, that completely addresses you and your church leaders' concerns, but if not, we'd be pleased to hear what else.
Jack, I would question you why paragraph 9 is necessary, the indemnification language. Church, the work's been completed.
Okay,
I think indemnification is completely unnecessary.
let me think about that.
It's done.
Yeah, okay. What do you think, Peter?
So
Well,
that
the
the
quality.
Yep, the town should not be held harmless for the quality of the work.
It's
Or
done.
should be held harmless. Yeah, I understand it's done.
But there's a quality component that lives on.
Yep.
That would be my, some of these things, you know, injury to a person resulting from the work, that
That
is
would
done.
have passed. Yep,
But the quality of the work continues.
right.
Or maybe some edits, significant edits to that paragraph.
And that's fine. I'm fine with that. Again, I'm working off an email and I'm guessing at what red lines are appropriate and what aren't.
Okay. Well, maybe the suggestion I might make is provide us your red line version
Yep.
with all the necessary markups, and we'll take that under advisement and come back to you with any further edits we might have.
Yeah, I think the one other piece, just talking about invoicing, is I get it that it's after the fact, the work's already been done, but for our record keeping purposes for all CPA projects, we just need a copy of the invoice that the work's been
Come
done.
on over and collect them.
Yeah, and
Give
that's,
you a copy.
yep,
Be our pleasure.
yep, and that's just standard, and that's nothing that we're asking from this project that we aren't of everything else. Yep, exactly.
So we'll send you this red line copy,
Thank you, Jack.
and then you can look at section 9 that we just discussed and determine what, if anything, you want further revisions to the document, particularly in section 9, and we'll wait. We'll send this to you, and we'll wait your response.
It'll be coming back to you promptly.
Okay?
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for being
Thank you
here.
for coming in.
Thank you for coming in.
Anytime you want to go up, Jack, let me know.
I'll pass.
I did it.
That could be bad to know.
I stopped my skydiving last year.
Okay, let's see. So moving back on to the agenda, back in order, I think we would be on letter B, which is recommendation for appointments in the police department. And Jack, that is your item as well.
Do. Captain and Chief, front and center. Attention. I'm going to read the motion while you're coming up. Then we'll talk about it. I move to appoint Jason Lucon, how do you pronounce that?
Luke and Tony?
I'll take-
Luke Antoni.
Okay, Puzzle. Thank you very much. As a full-time police officer for a term beginning March 26, 2019, and ending June 30, 2019, contingent upon successful completion of physical and psychological exams as approved by the Municipal Police Training Committee, MPTC, under 550 CMR 3.03 of a petition for an exemption from the basic police recruit training provisions under Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 96B. And you'll explain all this in a minute. Furthermore, I move to appoint Rennie Perez as a full-time police officer for a term beginning March 27th. By the way, why is it a day later than the other person?
To establish seniority.
Okay. And ending June 30, 2019, contingent upon successful completion of the PAT, that's Physical Abilities Test. I saw him, he looked like he was pretty healthy to me, required for entrance into the police academy. Now, the reason we have these vacancies is because we have these appointments, excuse me, is because we have a shortage of full-time police officers. We approved a few weeks ago, or months ago, 2 reserves officers to be full-time police officers. And are they still both at the academy?
Correct.
So we're really short of police officers, and that, will Mr. Perez have to go back immediately to the police academy to get, is he okay to be a full-time officer now?
We will apply for a waiver, which he will qualify for, which is up to 270 days, and then at that point, we would have to
Oh, that's good.
send him to an academy or apply for another waiver.
And how about Jason?
He is the one that is going for the exemption, so he will
Right.
likely follow in the same process Captain DiNapoli went with, where he won't have to go to the academy because
Oh, good.
he's already established level of training.
So why don't you go through the process the police department followed, and that and enlighten everyone on that. I think I just mentioned why we need these people, because we've had vacancies, but you can describe the process of selecting them more than I truncated.
Sure thing. So we actually ran 2 comprehensive processes that involved a posting for the jobs in particular. One was internal, one was external. Following the posting, we did a screening of the candidates which applied to see who met the qualifications and which did not. The captain then scheduled interviews with the candidates. We had a process all prepared that we've used in other situations, which involved the town administrator, myself, Captain DiNapoli, and one of the sergeants of their choosing, sitting on a panel and doing a series of oral interview questions. That was combined with a command staff review, which is made up of the sergeants and the captain, where they review the officer's qualities and training and list of other.
There's 10 categories.
Yeah, 10 categories there. And then those are all averaged out together and you come up with a score, and then the top candidates are the ones that we have recommended before you.
So I forgot to mention, I should have mentioned that Jason is already a full-time officer, has been so, up in Hudson, New Hampshire for over 20 years, correct? And Mr. Perez is already a reserve officer on the force right now.
Correct.
And he's, and what we're doing tonight is appointing him from the reserve to a full-time officer.
That's right.
That's the vote.
And so as a reserve officer, he's already received reserve officer training,
That's
right? But would have to continue further training to get through the academy
Right.
after some period of time that you want to get a waiver for.
Yeah, by state law, you have to either attend the academy or get an exemption from the academy.
Right, okay.
Colleagues,
Couple questions.
Sure.
What is the reason and rationale and purpose for establishing seniority in this case? I don't quite follow it, given that one is an established current reservist on our force, and the other is coming from not only out of town, out of state.
Sure. Anytime you're in a paramilitary type structure, seniority plays roles in certain areas. In particular, the collective bargaining contract that the full-time officers have, they use seniority for bidding vacations, things like that, bidding of shifts. In this particular case, we originally weren't anticipating doing both the same night. One was originally scheduled for a week prior, and their seniority would have been established in that fashion, where we're doing them on the same night. It's pretty much normal operating procedure to stagger them by at least one day. We did the same thing with the last two appointments, in that case by about a month.
All right, and then as far as, well, I mentioned current reservists. We have other reservists. Why are we going out of town and out of state to find another officer?
We touched on that on a lot of the correspondence back and forth. We've just lost an enormous amount of institutional knowledge as of late.
It's about 45 total years.
Yeah, about 45 collective years with the personnel that have moved on. And I just didn't feel comfortable from a scheduling standpoint or an operational standpoint that we could continue to replace people, in some cases with 28 years of service, with people that only had between 5 and a year and a half of service. So we discussed it, and it seemed prudent at the time that to break with tradition in this case. It's not the only time it's happened. It has happened in previous years.
Well, I'm not fixated on tradition myself, but though traditions are very good in many respects, but when it comes to functionality of a department that is so critically important to safety and well-being of this community, to me, it's more judgment and experience with that community. I understand Mr. Perez has only been on our force for about a year?
About a year and a half.
Okay. Are there not other reservists that would be that person's seniority? Be senior to him?
Is the question, are there other reserves with
The-
more time on?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't phrase it right.
Yes.
There are, okay. And somehow through the process, he came to the top.
Yes.
Okay. I have met both of these officers. I had a reasonable amount of time to talk to them. Clearly impressed with Mr. Perez. I do have reservations about someone who knows nothing about this town coming in here. I understand seniority, experience that this fellow may bring, but it's still, I don't know, just doesn't quite fit. But, you know, I'll back up to your better judgment.
So I have two additional comments. One that Catherine, John, and I, all three of us had an opportunity a couple of days ago to interview these two candidates in a round-robin affair, and that all three of us thought, I think, that they were well qualified. Jason's had how many years' experience up there in Hudson?
25 full-time altogether.
25 full-time altogether. And that I also spent some time with the chief today to find out for myself, what was the process that the police department went through in selecting particularly the reservists, because the chief has already said he felt he needed somebody with a lot of experience to replace the experienced police, the full-time officers we were losing, including one of the sergeants. But in terms of the reserve officer, this is the third reserve officer that we're promoting to full-time staff, and I was impressed with the process that the chief and the panel consisted of the chief, the captain, Peter, and one of the rotating sergeants. So all four had a vote, a consensus vote on which of the reservists, and how many reservists actually applied this time to be a full-time officer?
3 this time.
3. So 3 candidates were interviewed, and that I thought it was a very fair process, and that this Patrolman Perez came to the top in terms of the scoring, and there was no further evaluation by either this board, Peter Lombardi, the chief, or the captain. Whatever the score was, the person who ended up number 1, Mr. Perez, Patrolman Perez, merited this promotion, and that so it was blind to other considerations like, do I like this guy or not? You know, is he tall? What's the color of his eyes? I'm just, you know, whatever. So I thought I was very impressed with the integrity of the process that you went through, and that I understand you went through the same process several months ago when Amanda and me were also promoted from the reserve force to the full-time force.
Correct.
Catherine.
So I also was impressed with the process and actually learned a lot about the process through this. To the point of experience, I think we have an example in this room. Knowing Wenham is a very important part, but I think we have an example in the captain of the fact that someone can come from outside of Wenham with a lot of experience, and in my opinion anyway, fairly quickly acclimate to Wenham and work with the force, and is now a Wenham police officer after not a very long time. I was at a very short meeting, but just looking at Mr. Lucantoni's resume and talking to him a little, he clearly has a lot of experience in a lot of ways that he seemed quite willing to share. And I think that's what we need, right? Someone who has the experience. I think he also is familiar enough with the area and interested enough in the area that he will acclimate to whatever the Wenham way is. He'll be indoctrinated into it, I should say. And I think, you know, the amount of seniority is only one factor, if I understand this correctly, in this whole scoring process.
Right.
So you could end up with a reservist who has less seniority but scores better in other areas, rise to the top of the list. Am I understanding that correctly? Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking forward to having, as you are, I'm sure, a more full force. People actually.
A full force. May the force be with you.
Right.
Any other further questions?
Last comment. I just want to make sure you gentlemen understand. I'm not trying to be negative by my commentary. It's just very curious how the decision-making went. I thank you, Jack, very much for your thorough evaluation of how the process takes place.
I was very impressed.
I did read up on that myself quite a bit. So I was impressed by both of these gentlemen, and think we're going to be doing well by our department. So thank you.
I have no doubt.
So I've already made the motion. I'm looking for a second.
So there are two
Looking for a second
motions here.
first.
Are we going to vote these two? Are we comfortable voting these two people together? I guess is my question, because they could be voted separately.
Yes.
What's your pleasure?
Well, personally, this isn't my agenda item, but I would vote them separately,
Yeah, well,
just so
we'll do
it's
them
very
separately then,
clear. And
as long
each
as we
one
vote.
has a,
All right, Jason Tony.
see, I just wanted you to say the name again, that's all.
Luke and Tony
Okay,
I'm German-Irish.
from Ireland.
yeah,
I'm not from Ireland, he's not from the country.
so you've already,
Okay,
Made that
I made the
motion.
motion for both, but I'll make it again. I'll move, I'm not going to read the whole thing again. On Jason Lutoni, I made the motion, looking for a second.
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
And on Mr. Perez, I've already made the motion, looking for a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much,
Great,
guys.
thank
Good
you.
job.
Thank them for
Thank
their,
them.
in advance for all the hard work they're going to do. And we look
Bound
forward,
to knock
it was
that
nice to
over.
meet them.
Keep watching
When
that.
would Jason start, by the way?
16?
Yeah.
Is it April 16?
Oh,
Oh,
that's
pretty
soon.
soon.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's great. We look forward to,
Officers are working 16-hour days.
yeah,
I know.
yeah.
I hope they're banking the excess, too.
Yeah. We look forward to seeing them on the streets of Wenham. Okay, thank
Thanks for
you.
coming, guys.
Okay, I guess we can continue on in order. The next thing under new business is review of regional dispatch feasibility study for Danvers or Hamilton, and the updated intermunicipal agreement with State 911. And John has that agenda item.
Well, I do, but I'm going to defer to Peter.
Very smart of you.
on this
Yeah,
because this is
always a smart
very-
move.
This is a very
What are we gonna do in
complex
2 weeks
issue
from now,
going
though?
on here. And also, we have the chief and the captain, and the chief and the captain, who play a significant role in all of this. So thank you, all of you guys, for following this through, because you know my sentiments on the call center, and it hasn't waned any, but let's have the update if we could, Peter.
You don't want to summarize the 100-page document, John.
Absolutely not.
That's to me.
I have all I can do to digest this binder of 4 or 5 inches.
Go 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It could be done in 5 minutes. The bottom
I
line.
do it in 2.
Yeah, I bet you could, Jack. You should. This should have been your
Be
agenda
careful,
item.
really. You might get asked to do that.
As Jack would say,
Anyway.
I'll truncate it.
Yeah.
So just the analysis first?
Right. So we hired Municipal Resources, Inc. Last summer. Let me back up a little bit. So obviously, we've been now at the Regional Dispatch Center up in Middleton for 5 years or so, and there was some conversation going into last summer that State 911 may take over at the Regional Dispatch Center. We didn't really know where that was going to end up, what that was going to look like, and where that was going to leave us. So even before that, the town board, as part of our goal-setting session for this fiscal year, talked about the importance of assessing our other potential regional dispatch options. And so, since MRI had recently done work looking at the feasibility of doing both a regional dispatch center in Hamilton with Ipswich and Manchester, and in Danvers with Hamilton and Manchester over the past couple of years, and they had also done the operational audit and analysis of the regional dispatch center up in Middleton last February. We got them under contract.
Was that a year ago, February?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, a year ago now. A year ago a year ago
February of
February. We're not in February.
2018.
It's,
Right, 18.
Yeah, it's March.
February of
Time flies.
2018.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep, it's been just over a year
Yeah,
since that was completed.
Yep.
And there were obviously a number of issues that were identified in that audit, and we weren't sure what kind of progress was going to be made on that front too. So got MRI under contract to look at the feasibility of Wenham joining either Danvers or Hamilton, and not contingent on Hamilton joining with us in Danvers, just us going it alone, what it would look like. And so MRI worked with our chiefs and our captains and the folks over in Hamilton and in Danvers to get accurate, up-to-date information in terms of our systems and staffing and processes and budgets and all of that. And they looked at, based on what the existing programs were in Danvers and Hamilton, what it would cost to have us plugged into either of their systems. Essentially, to cut to the chase with Jack,
Eventually.
it depends on what kind of formula is applied, but generally speaking, it would cost about $130,000 for us to go to Danvers, and about between $175,000 and $195,000 for us to go to Hamilton. After the, that's before the subsidy that we're anticipating getting from State 911. As you might imagine, since State 911 is the funding agency for these regional dispatch centers, but is now also taking over the Middleton program, they weren't all that inclined to work with us to get us numbers on what kind of grant funding they would provide if we were to leave Middleton and go to either Danvers or Hamilton. So that was part of the delay.
They were a little conflicted.
Yeah.
I see.
But in the end, we did get numbers from them. It took a number of months, as had been the case in Danvers before us. And coming out of that, the net projected costs to Wenham to do that, to make the transition, would be about $75,000 a year to Danvers, and between $115,000 and $135,000 to go to Hamilton. Again, depending on the funding formula. We have historically paid $82,000 off the cherry sheet to be up in Middleton. So pretty reasonable costs for what it could potentially look like in Danvers in particular. And MRI's recommendation coming out of all the analysis, not just the financials, but staffing and their organizational capacity, their infrastructure, their recommendation is if we're going to go to one of the two, it should be to Danvers, not just for the cost savings, but for all those reasons. And the fact that it's $40,000, $50,000 cheaper a year if we were to go that route. But as you all know, with State 911 taking over Middleton, they're now reducing our cherry sheet contribution down to zero. And so, obviously makes the decision-making process a little more complicated. But that's in addition to those operating costs, I should also call out that there are on the order of $300,000 to $400,000 in one-time capital costs that would be needed to make that transition either to Danvers or Hamilton, that the state may pay. They have a grant program for those kind of costs, but again, I think would probably be a hard sell given that we'd be leaving one regional dispatch center that they're now running, looking to go to another. And so I'd leave that as the synopsis for the report from MRI.
Well, where did the dialogue go regarding Wenham having a good, solid seat at the table in review of the operations and control of the operation?
So I'll say that all the feedback from both communities, both Hamilton and Danvers, has been very positive in terms of wanting to work with us and giving us a seat at the table. Maybe a little different scenario. I think Danvers may have learned the lesson from a couple years ago with Hamilton, where they kind of said, nope, you're going to sign up. This is our program. And Hamilton obviously is sensitive to the fact that that's one of the reasons, not the only reason certainly, but was one of the reasons why we originally opted to go to Middleton in the first place. And so recognize that if we were to go back into the fold, that would be something.
Not to change the subject at all, but if memory serves me right, we used to spend about $180,000 a year being with the Hamilton operation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, that's accurate.
Okay.
Yep.
So just as a reminder, we commissioned MRI to do this study because we weren't sure where we're going to end up with the state. We were pleasantly surprised to learn several months ago that the $82,000 the cherry sheet will now be zero, and that zero cost to join the state with the 911. And that, as Peter just mentioned a moment ago, and secondly, that Peter, along with his other town manager, town administrative colleagues, were able to surprisingly, I hope the state is not listening to this, surprisingly get many concessions on the document with some hard negotiations that were troublesome to Peter and his colleagues. And they were satisfactorily resolved to Peter and his colleagues. And secondly, as Peter just let us know, that if we went with either Danvers or Hamilton, it would cost us between $130,000 and $170,000 a year, plus significant capital costs. Since we're really pressed for money here in Wenham, it would seem to me that case closed, and we're going to stick with the state and 911 program for zero additional dollars. I don't know how my two colleagues feel about this, but from a financial standpoint, I think it's a no-brainer.
Have that phrase again.
You know that's my favorite term of yours.
If I could just add a couple more points, because I hadn't quite moved on to where we were relative to the new now North Shore 911 center that is going to be effective July 1. As Jack mentioned, the first iteration of the intermunicipal agreement, the new intermunicipal agreement that State 911 had proposed to us, we did have a lot of concerns with in terms of how it was structured operationally, our withdrawal, moving quickly to shared frequencies, and we went through a whole litany of those things. We gave that feedback back to State 911. A number of the other managers and chiefs echoed those same concerns. State 911, we went through multiple iterations, I think 4 iterations in total. And in the end, they did meet every concern that we had initially raised. I think the most important for our purposes at this point and for this decision or making process is the fact that the original IMA had a 5-year window where you had to opt in, and then after then you could opt out with a 2-year notice. The original, or the new IMA that they proposed had a 7-year period, so a lot longer initial term. They'd modified that back down to 5 years, and they gave us a 2-year window initially to opt out as long as we gave 1-year notice. So I think at this point, I mean, for FY20, we have, the way that we have constructed our budget is based on the assumption that that $80,000 in regional dispatch is dropping off on the cherry sheet.
It's a charge to everybody. When they say dropping off, we're not going to be charged for that.
Correct.
In other words, no expense.
Correct.
The cherry sheet also goes the other way, just to make sure it's zero.
Right. It's an assessment on the cherry sheet.
It's zero, right.
It has been an assessment, and that's being reduced. So we don't have the financial capacity, if we wanted to today, to go to Danvers or Hamilton. Nor do we have the ability to be able to make the transition that quick. At the absolute minimum, it would require a year start to finish to make that transition. So the good news is that we've essentially bought ourselves some time to see how, once the state takes it over July 1, which they're still fully intending to do, how that program works, what it looks like, whether what's on paper is what's reflected, in reality. And then if there are any concerns with what the trend is, once the state takes it over, then we can circle back. And I know that both Hamilton and certainly Danvers is open and amenable to have, restarting those conversations if we're interested.
So what you've said is you and your counterparts are comfortable with the language in the contract that the state will give us a serious seat at the table.
Yep.
We've got input and.
Absolutely. They had us in a really advisory capacity initially, and that's changed back to essentially what it is now, maybe even a little stronger position than we are now. Yeah, I'd say, I think the surprising development, surprising for all of us who've been sitting around the table at these meetings for the past several years, is that Amesbury, who'd already given their notice
Yes.
of intent to withdraw, is that they are now planning to stay in.
Good.
So we're not losing any more towns out of the program.
The money is important, absolutely, but the seat at the table is far more valuable.
And that was what we all talked about a couple months ago, when we
Yeah.
saw their initial intermunicipal
Right.
agreement and said, free is nice, but not necessarily.
Those are the two key criteria that Kenny Walsh pounded on my head with years ago when we first started down this path. And he said, this is where the future is. I said, you got my attention, let's go. Let's see what it looks like. And I'm glad to hear what you've said, because
Yeah.
it's taken a lot of work on your part and your colleagues' part, as Jack said. So, thank you.
So the one question remains, and I think the reason why I'm glad that we did this study and we have the IMA that we do, is when the operational audit was done, whenever that was, now I've lost track, there were quite a number of operational issues that were addressed that were concerns in Middleton, which we think, and at least my understanding is they're working on. But they're not there yet. And so this gives us an opportunity to, obviously, initially, for money and any other reason, stay. But it also, I think, requires us to remain vigilant for a little while to make sure that those operational issues are actually corrected and remedied in the time frame that we have. And if they're not, then at least we're already have the information to have another option.
We know what the alternatives are if it
Right.
doesn't work out, but it seems to me that this is a state, they're going to make it work, and that for both public safety, you mentioned too, John, public safety, obviously,
Right.
and that if we certainly presume that the state can run this as efficiently as either one of the two towns could or other towns can, and that we're counting on them doing that, and that it's the least costly alternative for us. But we now know, as you said a minute ago, we now know what the alternatives are, and the other two towns are certainly willing to join us or have us join them, and what the price is. So
Right.
we can file that away as our something that hopefully we don't need to go back to, but if we do, we know where to go.
Well, I think a lot of the problems, and the new chiefs can tell me yes or no, but a lot of the problems came from the fact that the initial concept and building structure was one part of a big picture. And then when the transition happened, okay, no more building to do, now we need to get this thing operational. There were numerous missteps in management capabilities, and I don't think that was ever addressed adequately so that the operation could get better. And I say this because I had talked to two people who had worked there, and management was just not listening to even the employees. And I couldn't understand why they weren't. I would go back and I'd talk to the sheriff or whoever, and never got better. So,
Yeah, and certainly employee retention has been an issue that's been identified very clearly by the management that's in
Yep.
place there.
And they mentioned that pretty carefully.
And yeah, that's something that they're
Yeah.
monitoring. Training was another big piece. And when you have a lot of turnover, that certainly doesn't help. But the training program that's in place now is, I think, a lot better than it was originally.
I mean, they couldn't get days off. It was just, he said, we're making a ton of money, but we can't get time off. I can't be with my family at all. I said, well, that's really not healthy.
And the director up there now, and the assistant director, they've got that, certainly their marching orders from that operational audit in terms of priority items
Yeah.
to address. And they've given us regular updates in terms of how they've been progressing on the dozens of issues that were identified a
That's
year
good.
plus ago.
It's good.
I guess I'm sorry.
No, it makes me feel happy
Yeah.
that this is coming together
Well,
finally.
yeah, and I guess that was the point I was trying to make, not very clearly, that it's great to have all this, but we shouldn't be complacent. And we can file away the feasibility study, but we still will continue to monitor and get updates on the operational parts of the audit and how they're going. And
And we know generally what it would look like and how much it would cost to go somewhere else.
right.
And prior administrations, they were throwing money all over the place and not really being accountable for why they were spending it, what they were spending it on, and not trying to rein anything in. So the expense sheet must have been way out of control.
Yeah, and I think the current director and the sheriff that's in place now, they've made great strides in bringing that budget back to where it should be and needs to be, and in line with what other regional dispatch centers that are staffing for this kind of function.
I take this a little more personally because I took a lot of heat from Hamilton over the years when we decided to make a move.
They still talk about you, John.
I'm sure they probably do.
Mostly behind your back.
But I still feel that it was the right thing for the town of Wenham, and I'm so pleased. I can't thank you enough and the chiefs enough for staying the course and seeing that we got to where we need to be. So
I think we're all hopeful that we won't be spending nearly as much time on regional dispatch
Right.
in the coming years as we have over the past couple of years,
Yeah.
because it's been a lot of time.
It's been a long haul.
And not necessarily what it should be, quite honestly. So hopefully, it's definitely in a better place now than it was, and hopefully it will continue in that direction. The one thing I will say, just to the board broadly, is that the state, with this final version of the IMA, has asked each of the boards to sign off in the next several weeks. And so we wanted to have this discussion on the agenda for tonight.
Thank you.
With no decision point necessarily, but I'd expect at next week's meeting, there will be a discussion about potentially approving that, the
Yeah,
IMA.
I may. Okay, anything else on that? Anybody?
Anything I missed,
Anybody?
chiefs?
Anybody?
No?
Okay, good progress there. The next item on the agenda has to do with collective bargaining agreement. Do you have a review that you'd like to give, or shall we just pass over that?
Based on the executive
Ongoing.
session. Still ongoing. We weren't sure, just based on the timing of things, if that was going to be ready for approval tonight or not.
Okay, so let's see, the next item, out of order, back in order, is item F, and it's an update on the status of the request for qualifications for the town administrator executive search consultants. That is my agenda item. I don't have much to say, except that we have received three proposals from three different firms, MRI, which we're familiar with, Community Paradigm Associates, and the Edward J. Collins Center for Public Management. We each have copies of those proposals, and a designated time to meet with all three
This Thursday
firms this Thursday
at 1 o'clock, so.
Open.
Yep, it'll
public
be
meeting.
1 to 3 or thereabouts, about a half hour for each consultant firm to give their proposal, but they've submitted their written proposals to the board.
And I guess the only thing myself that other than reading the proposal, that I'm planning to do before Thursday is to actually look at the proposals versus the qualifications and see that they match up. I'm quite confident from just reading the proposals that they will, that everything we ask for them to include is included, but I think the...
What do you mean by that?
Well, in the request for qualifications, there was a list of criteria.
Yeah.
And so I guess it will be useful to me to make sure that all three of the firms that put in proposals actually meet those criteria before we meet them and interview them. I have no expectation that they won't. They're all three quite...
Well, if none of them do, we're in big trouble, that's all I can tell you.
Well, true. But that is one of...
We're not going to have a search.
Well, it is one of the responsibilities of choosing
understand.
a person, but I'm not...
I perused them, it looks
I'm
pretty good.
not worried
I didn't match them up exactly
them
like you're going to
matching
do,
the
but nevertheless, I
criteria.
thought it was pretty good. What was your
and-
initial review?
Well, as I said, I have not actually matched them to the criteria one by one, but having read the criteria and having at least briefly read both two of the three proposals, they match up.
Let me guess which two, never mind. Go ahead.
Well, I'll read them all eventually, but I have till Friday, right? It's only Tuesday. Thursday.
Yeah.
It's only Tuesday.
I know which one you didn't read.
We had to
anyway.
read this stuff first. So I think we're, well on our way.
Yeah, right.
I think that there's a hope, perhaps, that we'll actually be able to choose a firm on
I hope
Thursday.
so.
But that will be up to our will on
Well, if we don't
on
choose,
Thursday.
we're we're behind the 8 ball.
We are. And, you know, the only reason not to maybe is if we had some question that couldn't be answered by the folks that were in the room. But we've been given a lot of
Subject to
information.
so-and-so, subject to some research or some question that we have that they didn't adequately answer, whatever. But
Right.
we have to, I think we need to
Right.
come away with our preferred vendor here, consulting firm, and then subject to any follow-up questions or concerns we have. But anyway,
Yeah, I think that would be ideal. I think, well, that's the goal. I don't think we can guarantee that yet, but that is definitely the goal. Anything?
otherwise, we just have to tell Peter he can't leave until we decide this.
Or just chain John to the desk.
Just,
We already left already.
yeah. So is there anything else that we should talk about? That this is just an update to know that we actually have gotten proposals, and they're all good quality proposals that will watch us on HWCam on Thursday morning. Well, recorded on Thursday morning?
It's going to be HWK. I'm not sure if it's going to be live or recorded, but they're going to be here.
It'll be on YouTube quickly if anyone is that interested in seeing these interviews and our decision-making process.
I know people who follow this and who do watch YouTube. And I
Yes,
think
which
it's,
is...
What time is it Thursday?
It's
1 p.m.
important, I think we've committed to having this process be as important as possible. That said, getting 3 consultants and the 3 of us together in a room with 2 weeks before town meeting, was it even 2 weeks yet, has been a little challenging, so it's a daytime meeting, but we're trying. We'll all be together, it'll be televised, it'll be great. Let's see, that's all the new business. We have only one item of old business, and Jack actually has that.
Oh, I thought we were about to adjourn.
Has it got to do with water?
Of course, that's
There
why
we
Jack
go.
has it. And you even have a motion. It is the shortest motion I think I've seen since I've been a selectman, so Jack will be happy with
Actually, I was
that.
talking to Jackie about that. She tried to get me signed up for it today,
It's an,
and that I escaped just in time. Let's see.
She's back. She's stalking you, Jack.
I'm gonna start avoiding her office. She's got all these flyers.
Okay. You know what?
It's in,
I got it.
yeah, you got it?
Yeah.
It's short, real short. It's a Jack motion.
It's one line.
That's what I mean.
Subject to Jackie getting up here and explaining exactly what I'm about to move.
Oh, we already talked
did
about
that
this last
last
week.
All right, I move to approve the proposed water use mitigation policy. And I'm not entertaining any questions. They will all be directed to Jackie.
I'll second your motion.
Good. All in favor?
So, well, I just have one question, and that is, we did get a very thorough presentation last week. Is there anything new that we should know this week that we didn't know last week relative to this policy?
So there is.
He didn't jump up,
There
so-
is in your packet. There were some questions that came up about Danvers program. We said we're modeled after
yeah, I saw
Danvers.
that.
Jackie
Right.
reached out to the folks in Danvers. They gave an incredibly comprehensive response relative to what they've done in their program, the actual mitigation that it has created in terms of reducing water usage, the amount of different low flow,
Toilets.
yep, oh,
High flow.
that they've,
Okay.
fixtures that they've provided to residents over the past years, the education, social media campaigns that they've run using those funds. So all good things, I think, from us to learn from and to model after. That's all that's new and different.
Okay. Okay. So we have
What
a
happened?
motion. We had a water
I did
issue.
what you almost did 4 times.
So he's just trying to.
He's the water guy.
He's the water guy. So we had.
What?
This is a tough.
It's a watery
It's
subject.
a tough group.
Sorry, Jack.
We do have a motion, and we do have a second.
There you go.
And
You got two
Jack had
members.
no further discussion.
That's
So
right.
while he's getting paper towels, I will jump right in, because I know folks want to adjourn, and ask for a vote. All in favor of approving this?
Aye.
Aye. We'll get, if Jack comes back, we'll get his, but we have a majority, so we have approved that water mitigation policy. I know Jack would want to be a part of this one, but I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? I will second that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All in favor?
Aye. Let's go.
Okay. We're-
Aye.
Yeah.